So excited to be bringing you my friends Danielle and Monica from Mexico City. You're in Mexico City right now, yes?
We are.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
And
La
they
Gran
have this.
Tenochtitlan.
You what?
La
La
Gran
Gran
Tenochtitlan.
Tenochtitlan.
I don't know what that means. Okay, so so you're and you have this beautiful chocolateria in Mexico City that has literally changed my life. I am, and, no surprise, people know that I love agave spirits, and anybody who knows me knows I also love popcorn, David. Yes, and but I am crazy about chocolate, and I always have been crazy about chocolate, and it was an epiphany for me when and I'm Lou Bang from Agave Road Trip, and it was an epiphany for me the first time that I went to La Rifa Chocolateria in Mexico City, and and my friends had sent me. It was at the not the current location on Dinamarca, but in this little mall place, and I felt like. Okay, like I don't have a lot of time. I love chocolate, but I've had a lot of chocolate. I'm okay. I'm gonna go there, and I asked your employee because you guys weren't there at the time. I asked your employee what should I have that's special here, and she was like everything special. And I said, well, okay, then
Wow.
I'll have everything. And I think I literally got one of every bar, but then she also gave me the chocolate drink. And this is the epiphany that I was talking about was first I was annoyed at the size of your chocolate bars because they're so tiny and thin. Look, what are they doing? They're being cheap. I was so annoyed. We'll get back around to that. And then they gave me the drink and they said, "Would you like it based with water or milk?" And I thought, well, water seems like the cheap way. And your employee said, "No, no, no. Water is the correct way." I thought, correct way? There's a correct way? And then I drank, da, 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 I drank the beautiful cold water-based chocolate cacao drink, not even chocolate drink, right? Cacao drink? Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. I drank that and had the most amazing chocolate experience of my life. I mean, like, I've had a lot of chocolate to date at this point. This is, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Had a lot of
Yeah.
chocolate to date.
4 years, I think.
Yeah, a lot of years. That's a lot of chocolate under the bridge. And I thought, oh, I like, I know chocolate. And then I had this experience that completely changed me. And I thought, because this was at the end of a trip through Mexico, drinking a lot of agave spirits, having all of this amazing. I thought, well, that's really what's going on here. And so then I went back to your place and I had it again, and it was again the best chocolate experience of my life. And I kept doing this and drinking it, and it was this thing that was like a whole new world of chocolate to me. You guys opened my eyes to a whole new world of chocolate. And it's like my wife loves dogs. My wife loves dogs. And it would be like I said to her, you realize there are more dogs than just German shepherds, and she didn't know that. Or if you love hot sauce, it's like, wait, there's chilies other than jalapenos? There are all these varieties of cacao that nobody talks about. When we look at our artisanal chocolate bars, at least in the USA, we look at these artisanal chocolate bars and they'll say Venezuela on them. Like, okay, so the cacao comes from Venezuela, but what kind of cacao is it? Nobody's talking about this stuff. And you guys, this is exactly what you're doing in La Rifa. It's a whole different world of chocolate. It's why I wanted to do this tasting because I think we as a world, as a species, humanity is consuming chocolate the wrong way. There is a bigger, better, more beautiful world of chocolate that you have introduced me to. So I'm going to shut up now and let you guys introduce all of my friends to this world of chocolate. Danielle, Monica, it's your floor.
Hi, everyone, once again. Thank you very much for all of the attendees being able to share with us in this Sunday afternoon a little bit of what we do at La Rifa Chocolateria. My name is Monica. This is my partner, Daniel Reza, and we founded La Rifa Chocolateria 9 years ago. So we decided we wanted to make a very, very traditional chocolates, because in Mexico, what we normally do is that we, instead of eating chocolate, we drink it. So that's why we started making our traditional chocolate. But also for us was really, really important to be able to work with Mexican cacao and meet Mexican cacao farmers who have agroforestry systems in their plantations. Being as ecosystem where different timber trees, flower trees, different fruits, different animals, they all coexist together in one same space, creating a beautiful environment that also it preserves biodiversity, but it gives us an amazing different varieties of cacao, different flavors, different textures, and that is mainly what we are going to be focusing on this talking and tasting of chocolate. So once again, welcome. Do you want to say, ¿quieres decir algo?
Yeah, welcome and open your minds, the world, to talk, Lou and Monica. It's real, and it's important to say that many years ago was our natural chocolate world, but now the chocolate industry want to have only one flavor in the world, and this is so sad because all the life around the cacao bean we can lost, but the idea is to preserve this life and keep the opportunity to taste around the thousand the possibilities of flavors inside in the cacao.
Hey, hang on, I need to put a fine point on this, Daniel, because I think you've hit on something very important here. The more of these great chocolates we eat, the more we are saving the earth. Is that accurate?
It is. It is.
Okay, so we're going to eat more great chocolate and we'll be preserving real chocolate and we'll be preserving the environment and the earth by doing so. Okay, it's your floor again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, it is very important what Daniel is saying because we work with Mexican cacao farmers who have this agroforestry system that I was talking to you about. And what they do is a very important labor because I mean, what we do here at La Rifa is that we roast and grind and make chocolate from the cacao beans. But the journey that the cacao goes through before it turns to chocolate, it's actually very interesting, and it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of commitment with the soil, with the country, with the animals and the ecosystem. So what the cacao farmers are doing right now, it's a very important job because by having this different cacao varieties, they are preserving the biodiversity, yes, but also we are helping them to stay on their territories, to be able to still work their lands and to also preserve the lifestyle that they are used to by doing what they know what to do, by working on what they know what to do. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's very important for us to know the power that we have as consumers, as final consumers of chocolate. So my first advice in this live session might be to always read the labels of the chocolate or actually any product that you're eating to know the traceability of the ingredients. And I get distracted with the chat, but I'm going to try to answer.
You should ignore the chat. Let me pay attention to the chat, Monica.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So read your labels, eat real chocolate, and try to open your minds and open your hearts to all the flavors that we are about to taste in this session. Okay?
Well, now we can start tasting, and it's important to say, and all of these coins or the majority of these coins have only two ingredients. And well, you have your infographic right? Paper, and we only use cacao and sugar in this case. And we have, in the end, we are going to taste two special chocolates, but in this moment, we're talking about this process. No?
Okay.
And now we want to break and smell the Trinitario bean, and you can see
Does everybody did you put you should put like your bean should go on where it says Trinitario, right? That
Okay.
should be
Uh-huh.
the
See, see, see.
Trinitario beans, and then where it says Cacao Trinitario, that should be the little coin that
Exactly,
you
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah,
Sorry, we don't have the infographic because we are in Mexico and Lou kept the infographics.
they're
But
mine. You can't have
yeah,
But the
any.
infographics now is in the correct
order.
order.
See, so just place your coins and place your cacao beans
Yeah.
for you to have, well, unwrap your coins so you get to see the different colors
Yeah.
in the chocolate. And
I'm sorry, I just want to point out, then you're going to have one coin that actually I think each of you has at least three, maybe six coins that just say La Rifa. This is the bonus coin. You didn't know you were getting this. This is a freebie coin. So just put that to the side and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that afterwards. Okay.
And well, just whenever you're able, take a look of the beautiful infographic that Lou sent you with your kids, because that is a small text we prepare for the tasting. So enjoy that. But first, let's start enjoying the Trinitario bean.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. First, I think the little rules to tasting the cacao and chocolate. It's important to say it's very, very important. Feel and use your sentidos, senses in this moment. And the first, you can look the beans, the different size, the different colors in the chocolate. And now you can concentrate in the cacao bean of Trinitario. And the idea is you have one idea for the origin of the flavor of this chocolate. And now you can break this cacao bean and smell.
You can peel it and just take the husk that is covering the bean. So you can start like grabbing a tiny piece of it doesn't matter if the seed breaks. So I just wanted to taste it. And it's intense, people. So
Pero primero sería
prepared.
solo aroma y después probarlo un poquito, ¿no? As you can smell and a little tasty. And well, this is the cacao bean, and the cacao bean, it's the 70% of the flavor in our chocolate. And we have different important steps from the cacao, to the chocolate bar. And we think the first is como manejan en la plantación.
The plantation management.
The plantation
the agroforestry
management for the cacao farmers. The second important is the varieties of the cacao. We have 3 big families in the cacaos, and these families have hundreds of different varieties, and all of the varieties have a different flavor depend of the different terroir. No, it's the same case in the wine, and we can taste the same grape, but if they come from different countries and different regions, the flavor it's going to be completely different. Now in the cacao, we know it's the same case, and this is the Trinitario. Trinitario, it's one of the three varieties, and we're thinking it's the variety more balanced, no?
Yeah.
You can feel
it's a very traditional flavor.
More badass? It's the badass.
Balance.
Oh.
Not badass.
no, balance.
When you say one of the 3 varieties, you mean that we're trying today. There's a lot more than 3 varieties of cacao, yes?
What? We couldn't
I
hear
think,
you. Your mic is on your forehead.
I'm sorry, I moved the mic because I went to eat and I didn't want to chew in people's mouths. So you're saying the 3 cacao varieties, but you mean the 3 that we're trying today. There are a lot more than 3 cacao varieties.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's a very, very important distinction, because the varieties that Daniel was talking about are just the main classifications. And everything starts with a tiny, tiny flower. This flower, it's called the cacao flower, and it's going to get pollinized by a tiny, tiny, tiny mosquito, like a fruit fly. So this flight is going to pollinize all the cacaos that it's able. So it's not going to be differencing which variety it's going to pollinize. So what happens in most of the cacao plantations is that the farmers, they're not only harvesting just one variety, they're cultivating varieties in different varieties in the same space, just because sometimes this cross-pollination helps the varieties to get stronger. So that's why, because of this cross-pollination, we get so many different new varieties that keep changing and changing. And this is like they kind of adapt to the soil, to the weather, to the different managements that they get. So that's why we were talking about the importance of how the farmers manage their lands, their terroir, and what are the other spices that are being planted on the surroundings of cacaos, you know? So,
But let's to tasting the first
Trinitario.
chocolate, the Trinitary variety.
So I'm sorry. So very, very important. What I recommend you people is that you smell all the coins before eating them, but also to try to save some chocolate for later. So you get to compare the different chocolates, the different cacaos, and just try to figure out which one is your favorite by saving some Indian, okay?
And you can see the color and yep.
If we can talk about like so we're supposed to eat one of the Trinitario coin now, is that right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why they're so thin? Like to me again, this was an epiphany because I'm so used to like just take like chunky. I grew up eating these chocolate bars called chunky, which are exactly what they sound like. And I thought that's what like the better chocolate was the bigger chocolate. Talk about that for a second, please.
You know what? Okay, so when I am telling you this, just be breaking your cacao coin, chocolate coin, and just smell it and just let it melt in your mouth. Pass it, yeah. Grab a tiny piece and just pass it through your tongue. And I'm going to tell you why these coins are so thin. This was for us an internal battle because we all love a lot of chocolate. But the reason that our chocolate bars are so thin is because they are more tastier that way. We get a lot of the flavors just by melting the chocolate without biting it itself. So we let all the cacao butter and all the flavors to start spreading through our mouths. And if the bar was thicker, it was bigger, we had to chew it. So we don't like chewing the chocolate because we believe that by letting it melt, you get a lot of the flavors, the flavor notes, you get the acidity, and then you get, I don't know, I'm not going to influence you by telling you my flavor notes. So you're going to discover it through all the session today. So that's the main reason we make very thin chocolates, just for the experience of tasting a chocolate to make it more friendly, I guess. More tastier.
Yeah, if you remember, I say when we start to talk, open your mind, because these flavors, our chocolate, it's completely different. The traditional way to the traditional chocolate, on only bitter flavor we can feel, but now it's more easy for us to identify, to divide. In the chocolate, in this type of chocolates, we can find 3 types of flavor: the bitter, the sweet, and the acid. And in these 3 flavors, we can feel in the chocolate the combinations and the intensities start to remind us other flavors like fruits, like hojas, like leaves, spices, and other. But in the chocolate industry, we only feel bitter and sweet. We can't find chocolate with this type of flavors. No?
So these chocolates have very, very complex flavor profiles. So what you want to feel, what you want to get is, I know the chocolate tastes like cacao, but what's next? What do you feel extra? For me, this is a very, very Trinitario, I mean, is a very, very interesting cacao variety because it is very, very traditional. It is bitter, and the cacao flavor is what hits you first. But then, what do you taste? ¿Tú qué pruebas en el Trinitario? I get cherries sometimes, like ripe fruits, but after the cacao hits, you know. ¿Tú qué no te sientes en el Trinitario?
The Trinitario sometimes remember like fresh fruits, strawberries, and sometimes like a tamarindo. I don't know, tamarind. And you, Lu, what do you feel?
What do you think? What are you getting, Lu, on the Trinitario?
It tastes like chocolate to me. You know, like I'm really, my palate is not, I'm not good at this tastes like that. Like I'm really not good at that. It tastes delicious to me. And I honestly get kind of thrown by the idea of find this fruit in here, particularly when you talk about how the terroir means so much to it. And, you know, again, like everything, everything I know that's important about chocolate, I've learned from you guys, right? And you taught me that I'm going to taste the Trinitario that comes from the Jimenez farm, and it's going to taste different than the Trinitario chocolate that comes from the other farm.
Ostocan.
That's it.
In Ostocan, right.
Yeah. So like I don't really play that game in my head. I just play the do I love this or do I not? And inevitably I always do.
It's fair. The more you get to know chocolates and the more you get into the chocolate world, because fortunately we find many, many different projects focusing on cacao, focusing on chocolate. And it's very interesting to be like trying to practice and getting your palate to be able to identify different flavor notes. I taste a lot of chocolate, but it's perfectly fine if you don't get any of these notes. We will be happy if you find like differences between all the chocolates that you're about to taste. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this Trinitario variety that we just tasted. This chocolate is from Ostuacan in Chiapas. So Ostuacan is located on the north part of Chiapas and is the home of Margarito Mendoza. Margarito Mendoza is a cacao farmer that we've been working with for several years now. And it is very, very interesting to see all the progress and all the path that Margarito has been working and walking in. When you said tamarind is a flavor now. No. Okay. So it's interesting to see the path that Margarito has been walking because every cacao farmer does their own fermentation. So cacao goes through a post-harvest process that it's the fermentation. And every cacao farmer is going to have their own process, their own empiric process to do the fermentation. So this first chocolate is the Trinitario from Margarito Mendoza in Ostuacan.
But let's go to try the Uranga or la semilla de Uranga.
Okay, so let's go
and just to be clear, everybody should leave a little bit of Trinitario to go back to, right?
Save some just to compare them.
And if you didn't listen to that and you ate it all, just send me a text and I will FedEx in the next hour. I'll have a delivery driver bring you a sample of more of Trinitario. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so let's go to our second cacao bean. It's the Uranga variety.
Right? And it's other Trinitario.
Yeah.
The name is Uranga, no?
Yeah. So same variety technically, but
whoa, wait a minute, hang on a second. You just threw a curveball at me that I wasn't expecting. So Uranga is a kind of Trinitario, if I'm following you correctly, in the same way that both, say, Bequiche and Largo are kinds of Karwinskis for people who drink agave spirits.
I guess.
Oh!
¿Cómo?
Okay, keep going.
El Trinitario es
como
que el Trinitario y el Uranga son trinitarios, como el Bequiche y el otro son primos.
Yeah, but it's Trinitario, and it's the same like in the agaves. Sometimes the beans have a scientific name, but in different towns, the people calling like a different names. And Uranga is specifically for a one good friend for a family, Familia Jimenez from, and his last name was Uranga, and it's like in honor for this friend. The family Jimenez put the name Uranga for his Trinitarios, no?
I'm guessing I know the answer to this question because it frustrates me with the agaves, but is there somewhere where you can find a list of here are the scientific names and then here are all of the different familiar names that relate to the scientific names?
We could do it. I mean, it's a community name, like a traditional name. It really depends on the names that the farmers give to their trees. But yeah, we could do that as an exercise.
We'll talk afterwards.
Okay, perfect. Okay. But well, let's taste this second chocolate. This is another Trinitario variety. So imagine it's a cousin from the first coin that we just tasted.
Yeah, look the color, break and smell, and let
it melt in your mouth.
A little piece.
Save some for later. And well, this is Uranga. And as Daniel was saying, this is a variety from Pichucalco, another community in the north part of Chiapas. So Urangas are harvested and fermented by the Jimenez family. So Don Tito Jimenez and his daughters, they ran cacao plantations in Pichucalco. And they have different cacao varieties, and we are tasting the first of the two varieties that you have on your tasting kit. And this Uranga variety, it's another kind of Trinitario, but it's named as in honor of Mr. Uranga, who was the person who gave Don Tito Jimenez their first Uranga bean. So Don Tito cultivated it and harvested, and in the end we have this amazing chocolate that for me it's super creamy and just very sweet chocolate. And it's very interesting to see the difference in the sweetness of the chocolates, because all the coins that you're about to taste are 70%, well, at least the first three are 70% cacao, 30% sugar. Nothing else is added. So it's interesting also to see the texture of the different coins. Some of them are creamier, some of them are more astringent, some more tannin.
Yeah, and feel comfortable to
dislike them too.
Dislike it or feel that different memories, because the flavor is memory, no? And we all have a different reference, and all of these reference, it's the
have an impact.
Have an impact, and it's son las mejores, no?
And they're the best references.
Yeah, they are the best reference. And we're thinking the flavor in the chocolate, it's more impact for the varieties and the process post-harvest. And we think these two chocolates, it's a good example, no? Because it's two Trinitarios with
from different regions, different post-harvest processes, different hands working on those cacaos. So we can see the difference in flavor.
And if you already said this and I missed it because I was running trying to find my chocolate coins, skip it. But did you explain what the post-harvest differences are in the two different Trinitarios?
¿Cuáles son las diferencias?
The two are a fermented cacao. Margarito Mendoza with this cacao, this Trinitary, he fermented like 136 hours, and Monica Jimenez started to ferment it
168.
68, like it's like a more temperature and more beans fermented. And I don't know if you feel, but I think the citric, the acid, it's more
It's lower.
slower,
Slower.
slower,
Ajá, baja.
lower, and it's because more cacaos from this batch it's fermented, no? And Margarito Mendoza dry the cacao only with the sun and with the direct sun, and Monica Jimenez start to use one like a dryer, o sea, como una lámina transparente, transparent floor, techo,
Roof.
roof.
Well, the difference is, as Daniel was saying, every cacao farmer has its own particular way of doing their post-harvest process. In essence, is fermentation and drying, but depending on many, many factors such as the weather, the amount of mucilagos, the size of the batch, it's where we are going to get differences. But mostly, they all ferment and then dry their cacaos. We're going to talk about another post-harvest process in a minute.
Would that be the roasting part that you're going to talk about in a minute?
No, we are going to talk about the washing cacao.
Okay, we'll get to roasting, right? Because Eric is really curious about the differences in roasting between these two.
Well, fair enough. Let's start tasting our third chocolate coin, the Blanco Marfil.
¿Quieres contarnos un poco de la semilla? ¿Qué se les
So
dice?
this chocolate has its own cacao bean. So it's another different variety. We're going to see that this is a very, very special chocolate. It's going to be a lighter color in this cacao. And if you see it, you can also see that the bean, well, we have the worst light here, but you can see that it's a very, very light cacao bean. You can taste it and you can feel a very, very crazy, intense flavor. And well, this variety, it's called Blanco Marfil, is also from Pichucalco, Chiapas, from the Jimenez family too. And this cacao grows in the same cacao plantation as the Uranga variety that we tasted. I know that you can see the color now in your chocolate coin, and this coin almost looks like a milk chocolate, but no, people, there's no milk in this coin. The only reason that we see a lighter color in the Blanco Marfil is because it has a higher amount of cacao butter. So Blanco Marfil is a native variety from Pichucalco in Chiapas, and it's a white almond. So imagine that whenever you cut the cacao bean, when it's fresh, you are going to see that normally the Trinitarios or the forasteros are either purple or pink. But the white almonds have, they're white when you cut it fresh open, because they have a higher amount of cacao butter. So this makes the chocolate very, very creamy. It melts in your mouth immediately, and you get a lot of intense flavors. I mean, I know that the chocolate tastes like cacao, but we also get like different, very, very notes, intense notes, such as I haven't tried it, so.
Yeah, more citric, and feel like a little more sweet. And it's important to say the cacao, it's a one bean endemic from this area, Mesoamerica. And in this area, many years ago, 500 years, 500 años atrás, many years ago, different civilization domesticated different beans, and all of these beans domesticated because they need principal food, nutrients, and one flavor identified with the people, with the people in the town, no, not only for a trend or for an industry. And this is the reason now the cacao farmers had special cacao beans. They preserve these cacao beans only for the flavor and for the memory, because sometimes this tree was the favorite for his grandfathers and his grandfathers, and not specifically for vender, to sell this cacao for the industry. And it's because this cacao les trae memoria, ¿no?
Brings memories.
Brings
so
memories.
What we were talking about was the cultural mindset that we have, depending on where we grew up or what's the traditions of our families. These varieties that we are tasting nowadays are the favorite flavors of generations and generations in the Southeast in Mexico. So it's very, very interesting to see all the love and the passion that cacao farmers put into their cacao plantations to preserve not just the biodiversity in the region, but also to preserve this kind of varieties. By taking care of the cacao tree, we get the tree grows with the plantation, and if the plantation has changes and if the plantation has like improvements, we will get the trees improved too, naturally, you know?
You know, to that point, like it's kind of shocking to me that again, and maybe I'm missing something, right? It's entirely possible that that this was right in front of me the whole time, because I'm not always great at paying attention, and you were just the first people to point it out to me. But it's shocking to me that I don't see this anywhere else, that I don't see anybody else talking about varieties of cacao in reference to chocolate. And yet in these communities, they're paying attention and they're consuming it, even though they're selling it, to your point, they're selling it to the outside world, and the outside world's taking it and just homogenizing it into Three Musketeers bars. Is that in essence accurate?
Normally what the cacao farmers do is that they do not separate per variety. They just do a blend of the cacaos that grow in their cacao plantation, but it also has to do a lot with the infrastructure of the cacao farmers. Because let's all remember here that Mexican cacao farmers are super, super independent, and the extent of their land area are like maybe 1 or 2 hectares. So that's
small
nothing.
production.
Yeah, they have very, very small production, and they don't have a lot of government aid or anything, so they have to do what they can with their own possibilities. That's why it's very, very important to also mention that in an agroforestry system, they try to make it as sustainable as possible. So for example, once they cut the cacao pods and they empty the cacao beans, they use the shell, the empty cacao pod, to create compost. And this compost is going to become a fertilizer, not just for the cacao tree, but also like the other fruit trees and the other like plants that are growing in there. So this is a way that cacao farmers make it as sustainable as possible using their own resources. So Mother Nature gives you people.
Y no siempre hay quien, o sea, el productor no siempre tiene a quien venderle el cacao por variedades, porque significa mucho trabajo.
Yeah, and also what Daniel was mentioning is that sometimes to find buyers that are able to buy specific single origin batches, it's very, very complicated. So they do what they can with their possibilities. So it's very, we are very privileged to be able to taste all the hard work behind this 3 single origin chocolate bars. So it's interesting, people, and I hope you enjoyed this 3 first chocolate coins, but I'm going to talk to you about my favorite chocolate, which is the traditional chocolate.
And you can see the mold, it's so different. It's like a little pizza.
It's a beautiful, beautiful chocolate that
Is
it
this
has a
is
very different
is this
texture.
this is chocolate de mesa?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
So this is, and if I'm translating correctly, and my Spanish is fantastical. So this is a table chocolate.
exactly.
Yes,
So what I
perfectly.
love about this concept is it's kind of like, in Italy you have table wine, right? It's just like there's
Uh-huh.
wine on the table, you drink it, it's common. I kind of like the idea. I hang out with you guys. I've got table chocolate. Oh,
Table
this is just the
chocolate.
chocolate that's hanging around on the table that you eat every day. There's the everyday eating chocolate, and then
Ex-
the stuff that's for other days. Sorry, go ahead, your floor.
But well, I'm going to talk to you about the chocolate de mesa or the traditional chocolate because in Mexico, it's a very, very new thing to do to eat the chocolate. Because traditionally in Mexico, we drink chocolate. And this is for us very important because traditional drinking chocolate, it was the first step in the chocolate chain. So traditional chocolate was the first way of consuming cacao in Mexican communities. And we're going to talk about another post-harvest process. So before we taste our chocolate de mesa, we're going to talk about the difference between the fermentation and the washing of the cacaos. So the first three coins that we tasted were fermented cacaos. We've talked about the fermentation that the cacao farmers do, but this is a newish process that it has been made in Mexico, the fermentation. Because traditionally, many, many years ago, the cacao was washed. So the cacao wasn't fermented, and we got by result a very, very intense dark flavor.
Can I just
So
I just want to can I just explain that washed piece because I found this really interesting and it defines
please,
for me a lot of the fermentation process, right? So you've got the pods, right? The giant pods that come off of the tree that grow in such a weird way. They don't like hang the way an apple does, right? But they just grow in the middle of the tree there. You got the pods come off. If you cut it open with your machete, because I walk around with a machete when I'm in Mexico, you cut it open with your machete, and you see that inside, this white goopy stuff, and inside the white goopy stuff, you've got the beans, right? The cacao beans that we have on our little paper mats here. Those beans are inside, but the goopy stuff, that's just a mass of sugar. So when you cut it open and you drop that mass, that pulpy mass with the beans inside, drop it into anything open air, the yeast that lives all around us is like, whoa, that's a lot of sugar. I'm going to go do some eating. And the yeast comes down and it eats the sugar and it starts spitting out alcohol. And then the acetic acid bacteria says, whoa, that's some fine alcohol you're spitting out, yeast. And it comes down and it eats up the alcohol and it's spitting out acetic acid, also known as vinegar. Accurate so far?
very accurate. That was probably one of the best explanations about
Uh-huh.
fermentation that we've
and
got.
and Chava wasn't here to witness it. So like to me, really, you're not fermenting the cacao beans. You're pickling them in the vinegar and the
Oh,
alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. This
Sí,
is
sí.
the
I remember.
conversation we've had many, many times.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
like I don't want to overwhelm the conversation with this, but when you're talking about washing it, and this I found fascinating. If I remember correctly, you were telling me that until Calabo came over from Europe to purchase uh, cacao from the Mexican farmers, they weren't really fermenting in
Yeah,
Mexico. They were
exactly.
washing all that pulp off so that you didn't have all that sugary stuff turning into alcohol and vinegar and changing both the flavor and the texture of the cacao bean. That's what you mean by washed, is getting rid of all that sugar so you've just got the pure raw cacao bean unaffected by all of that
All these
fermentation.
elements. Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. And you may ask, why would you waste all the flavors and all the craziness that fermentation gives you by washing the cacao?
Mhm.
And the reason of this is that in Mexico, we used to combine the cacao with different flowers, different spices, different chiles, or whatever endemic fruits that were growing in different communities. That's why nowadays we have more than 60 different cacao based drinks that have many things in common. They're cacao based, they are made with water, and also they are drink cold because we have very, very warm weather here, and we have warmer weather in the southeast. So you can go to Tabasco and you can taste pozol, and you can go to Guerrero and taste some chilate. You can go to another community in Tabasco and they will have their own way of making pozol, which is another traditional drink made with cacao, made with corn and nothing, and water. Okay. So Lou has had the pozol experience, which
inside
is
in the cacao
inside of a
plantation.
cacao plantation. So Lou is a very lucky man. And pozol is a very, very
it's just funny. I consider myself a spoiled person from this, but I like it also was so beyond me what I was experiencing that I don't think I got everything out of it that I could have, right? We were literally in a stream. We were in a stream on the farm where they took the cacao and they ground it up and they used the water from the stream as the drink. And like I didn't like the temperature, like and this is me being a an idiot who's yeah, it's funny. You're saying think about your memories. Like my memories of what chocolate drinks are is not this. And it was hard to wrap my
yeah.
head around it. And I really need to do it again. Are you guys busy tomorrow?
No, let's
Okay.
see you in Chucalcos River.
I wanted to show this picture not only because it's a big picture of Daniel, but also because it shows him holding,
Beautiful faces.
right? It holding one of the cacao pods that's been cut open so you can see what that goopy pulp inside
Mhm.
is, and it also that pulp tastes great. The
Oh,
pulp is
it's
delicious, and you
amazing.
should
See,
you should come to Chiapas with me
with us.
tomorrow as we
See,
go down to have this pozole, which has nothing to do with pozole, but pozole, and then you
right.
can taste the pulp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a
yeah,
life-changing experience to taste
yeah,
mucílago straight off the bean.
yeah.
So
This pulp, this flavor, with this weather, it's almost impossible to think this is the origin of the
of
chocolate
chocolate.
of
Yeah,
chocolate. Huh?
it is. It is.
But it is, this is the magic.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I was talking about traditional drinks. So it's fine. It's fine. It was a very, very nice introduction for the difference between fermentation and washing the cacaos. So what I wanted to do, guys, is I wanted to grab a piece of your chocolate de mesa, and you're going to see that the texture is very, very different. It's a thicker texture, and you are able to see all the cacao pieces. Well, then he has to go because he has to take a call. But anyway, I'm the funny one of the team. So you're going to see that you get to chew on the solids of the cacao, but also you get to feel the sugar too. So the tiny pieces of sugar. And the idea is that this chocolate, the chocolate de mesa, is meant to be as a drink, no? But I think it's very, very interesting to see the difference in the texture mostly, but also on the flavor of the cacao. So it is a sweeter chocolate. It is sweeter than the 3 coins that we tasted before, but it is interesting that the flavor of the washed cacao, it's a much plainer flavor, bitter, and some people might say that smoky it's a defect, but I think that smoky notes in the chocolate, it's a very, very traditional thing of Mexican cuisine to my taste. I mean, Daniel is not here to hear me, so he probably might be angry. But I think smoky, it's interesting, and it reminds us to a lot of traditional dishes in Mexican cuisine, in Tabasco's cuisine too. So chocolate de mesa for me is a treat. Either I drink it or I eat it. So just eat it and save some if you want to melt it in a hot water cup or something. But Daniel is back now, so don't tell him about the smoky flavors. So we tasted, ya probamos el
Yeah.
chocolate de mesa. So that was the chocolate that it's traditionally being drank in Mexico. Whenever you are able to visit any place in Mexico, make sure you try some of the water-based traditional chocolate. So that's going to be another life-changing experience for you, as it was for me at the moment, and I believe it was for Lou too when he had his first agua de chocolate, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
Completely
So
opened my eyes
I'm
to
going
this
to
whole
take a minute to talk about a very, very interesting project that we made last year with Agave. What?
So we have a very good question
Okay.
from Grover. How long will this chocolate remain fresh? And if you store it in a refrigerator, will it remain fresh longer?
¿Cómo?
The chocolate coins doesn't even need to be refrigerated. You can just store it in a cool, dry place. Just get it away from humidity, and it's going to stay fresh for
1 year.
1 year. I mean, we normally give stock life or life in shell. I don't remember how you say it.
Shelf life. Yeah.
Shelf life for 12 months. But I have been saving some of my chocolates for longer just to see the changes. And the chocolate, the flavor maintains, so it stays the same.
You know, and I'll say that you guys actually you got me this chocolate back in what was it, November, December?
Yeah, November.
So it's already like at its half-life moment. I'll also say my wife Connie, she tends to it does if like as soon as she unwraps a chocolate bar, even if it's only been wrapped in paper, she'll eat a little bit and then she'll put it in the refrigerator because it's just a habit for her. She figures it'll last longer, which is funny because it
Okay.
won't because I'll see it in the refrigerator and I'll eat it. She should be hiding it somewhere. But if you do store your chocolate in a refrigerator for whatever reason before you eat it, you got to let it come up to temperature, right? You don't
Yeah,
want to eat
Yeah.
it
exactly.
cold. Okay.
Yeah, cold.
No, cold chocolate doesn't provide you with all the crazy flavors and the texture and the creaminess in the chocolate, right? So yeah, store it. If you are going to put it on your fridge, just leave it to rest for a while before you eat it, and you get all the craziness in your mouth. Okay?
¿Puedo decir algo?
Sí.
Yeah. Well, now we're tasting 3 different chocolate, 70% of cacao, 30% of sugar, and we tasted
De chocolate de mesa.
the chocolate de mesa. And I think it's important to say the chocolate de mesa and the agaves, the mezcales, the people make these products with soul, and they have a connection because it's not only a product, because all of these projects drink this mezcal, drink this cacao, and have a other connection, not only like a one piece or merchandise. And yeah, los que queremos invitar para que prueben, se animen a probar estos chocolates de
Sí,
mesa.
we invite you people to taste more chocolate, more chocolates de
drinks.
mesa, and more chocolate bars itself. Okay.
Yeah.
But
And no?
before we continue, we wanted to talk about a very, very interesting collaboration we did last year with Agave Road Trip.
Is this where we talk about my chocolates?
Sí, sí,
Yeah.
sí.
With
Okay.
other important product for us, for the
Yeah.
for
For la rifa.
for the Mexican culture.
Yeah.
Because
it was a thing that we've never done before, and we weren't really, really, really conscious about what we were doing. But as our experience with Lou, it has been a very, very unpredictable road. So the first collaboration, the official collaboration that we made last year was
Puke para llevar. Yeah,
Puke para
like
llevar.
so this is how this project came about, right, is my wonderful, beautiful friends Danielle and Monica. I brought them. I fell in love with their cold water-based cacao drink, and I could only have it in Mexico City when I go to Mexico City to see them. And so um, uh, I brought them on tour to the USA, where I think the first year we hit, like, was it 6 different
Yeah.
cities? Yeah,
Mhm.
but my whole goal was I wanted to introduce them to somebody in Chicago who would say, "Well, I need to serve that cold water-based cacao drink so that I could drink it without going to Mexico." Not that I dislike going to Mexico, it's just I can't go to Mexico every morning. So, so they came to Chicago, and then they met my very good friends at Dark Matter Coffee, and now Dark Matter has their own chocolate factory where they're sourcing the cacao from La Rifa, which is perfect. It's beautiful. But they met all of these other wonderful mezcalerias and restaurants here in Rajiv. I didn't know you were part of this. They met all these wonderful mezcalerias and restaurants in the USA, and they became friends with them because you can't meet Daniel and Monica and not become friends with them. They're just that kind of
Oh,
people. And so one day I'm on the phone with them, and they're showing me this image of a bar they're doing with the guys at Claro in Brooklyn, and I'm like, oh, screw that! Claro gets a bar and I don't get a bar. And I think the way that they presented it to me was, would you like a bar? Like that's a would you Lou? Would you like your own special chocolate bar? I'm like, are you kidding me? That's not a question. That's like, why did you not offer this to me 100 years ago? But we started talking about, like, what can we do that would be interesting, that would tie into agave, so that I can at least write it off as advertising for Agave Road Trip, a podcast, an award-winning podcast that helps gringo bartenders better understand agave syrup, spirits, and rural Mexico. And so I started asking these guys, like, how can we incorporate pulque into the bar? And they started doing all these wonderful experiments until I get this amazing text message with pictures where Danielle has cooked the pulque down into a caramel. Like, whoever thought of that? Why is nobody else doing this? Where is the pulque caramel in the world? This is crazy. You guys are doing stuff nobody else is doing that everybody else should be doing. And so then they made these beautiful little Pulque para llevar chocolate bars that have sold out, right? Um,
Oh,
will do. They've sold out very quickly, thanks to many people I think who are participating in this. Um, and thank you, Bill. And yeah, and so they're these great pulque caramel
yeah.
filled chocolate bars, but they held some aside because they knew that they were doing these at the same time. They've just been sitting in my basement, which is why they're leaking a little bit. I'm sorry about the leaking, but if you lick the foil, it still tastes like the caramel. So that, and then
mhm.
when they sold out, we were like, well, we should do something else. What else should we do? And this, Eric, is going to get to your point about you're drinking Felix Aneles's Pachuga distillate as you're eating the chocolate. Well, so let's get to that bonus coin that you didn't expect. So what's in this bonus coin? Well, let me tell you. So Felix Aneles has a cousin named Lalo Aneles who lives just a block away in Santa Catarina, Minas, Oaxaca. And he, like his cousin Felix, makes pachuga. So what's pachuga? Pachuga is an agave spirit where you've just, and this is a nutshell explanation. There are different definitions of pachuga everywhere, but specifically what I'm talking about here is what Lalo has done is he made a pachuga. He made an agave spirit, which you might call mezcal, but was not certified as mezcal. He made it by cooking his agave in a stone-lined earthen oven. He then milled it by hand using a wooden mallet. He fermented it open air in wooden barrels, and then he distilled it in his wood-fired clay pot stills twice. This is how he makes his spirits. This is what he does. But then, when he's making a pachuga, he throws that back into the still for a third distillation. He adds a whole bunch of different fruits, bananas and apples and plums, raisins, and then he throws in some rice. He throws in some cinnamon and some almonds, and then he puts in a chicken breast, a raw chicken breast, and he distills it a third time. So distillation is the separation of alcohol from water. Alcohol starts boiling at 173 degrees, water at 212. Above 173, below 212, the alcohol is going to turn into a vapor. So, in essence, what Lalo is doing is he's simmering and I'll get to the chocolate really, but he's simmering these beautiful fruits and the chicken breast and the cinnamon, all of that in this wonderful agave spirit for hours at around 183 degrees. And the end result is this Pachuga spirit that tastes like all of that stuff. But then when you go back into the still, and I do this, when you go back in the still, you've got all of these wonderful fruits that have turned into a compote. It's this wonderful compote. And then there's this liquid that they call, well, that Lalo calls miel de Pachuga, the honey of the Pachuga. And so we got a bunch of that shipped from Oaxaca, from Lalo, up to our friends Daniel and Monica, who then made these little chocolates. So it's cacao. I might be wrong about this, but I think it's just cacao with the dehydrated fruits from the Pachuca. Is that accurate?
Ese es nada más cacao con la pulpa.
Uh-huh. This is cacao and the pulp and 20% of piloncillo, no? And but the
What is
flavor,
pioncillo? What is pioncillo?
panela,
What is so it's
violet.
basically it's
Piloncillo
raw
is
sugar.
Yeah.
exactly,
Roast,
exactly.
exactly.
It's kind of a traditional unrefined sugar that it's like a brown sugar, but it has a very, very interesting flavor note that it's typical of piloncillo. And we decided to change our regular sugar use and switch it to piloncillo because we were looking to find some more traceable ingredients. And we found out that at San Luis Potosi in the Huasteca, we decided to start working with them and then make the chocolate using piloncillo instead of sugar. So this coin that you're about to taste is made with piloncillo. So
Actually, I'm still on the pulque para llevar one because it takes a lot to get this unwrapped, and my hands are covered in gross sticky stuff. I'm going to make an analogy right now. I'm
okay.
gonna make an analogy, and people who bought, not everybody, but a lot of the people who bought the pulque para llevar chocolate bars from me heard my story, and the story that I like to tell is, like, you made these wonderful chocolate bars for me after making this wonderful caramel with the pulque, and I tasted it, and it's delicious, but it's not
Uh-huh.
nearly as good as the chocolate bars made from the exact same cacao without
Yeah.
the caramel. And so to me the analogy is really, in essence, this pulque para llevar and this coin that's made with the pachuca fruits is in essence like a cocktail, where
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather have the agave spirit neat. Don't put it into a cocktail. I want to taste the agave spirit, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying this isn't delicious. I think it is, but really, at the end of the day, the experience for me, I would answer all of your questions, but if I type now, I'm going to ruin because I've got caramel all over my hands. But the experience to me that is the better experience is the straight up cacao.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree. I totally agree with you. But sometimes I think you
Mhm.
find some elements that go very, very well with cacaos. So I think it's very, very interesting to see the combination
Mhm.
between the pulque syrup and the chocolate. Crazy.
Yeah, and
Two, wait, two.
personally,
Mhm.
with the agave with the pulque, so we love it. And the pulque, it's fermented, no, from the agave, and it's magic because it's live fermented. Because if you want to try good flavor in the pulque, you need visited now the tinacal, no, when the tlachiqueros make the pulque.
Yeah,
Now
let me
in
let me
Mexico City, it's impossible find good pulque.
Yeah.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
It's in the around the Mexico City.
Yeah.
It's
But not
we
in the
come.
city
So
itself.
So let me just just put a fine point on what you just said, Danielle, because I see that Grover asked that question. So what pulque is like? So in order to distill agave into a spirit, you first ferment it, and to ferment it, you have to take the carbohydrates in the raw agave and turn them into fermentable sugars. That can be done a number of ways, but primarily it's done by cooking the agave. But the agave itself has to be able to convert those carbohydrates into sugars because the sugar is the energy that the agave uses to reproduce. And so,
Yeah.
if you just wound the agave plant in the right way, it starts creating the enzymes that convert those carbohydrates into fermentable sugar within the body of the plant. The thing is, the agave didn't realize it was covered in yeast, so it immediately starts fermenting. It's the oldest fermented beverage in the Americas that we've been able to trace, and it's delicious, but it ferments so rapidly it doesn't travel. You'll see some canned versions of pulque. Skip it. It's not the real thing.
Yeah.
Daniela and Monica are right. Like, you got to go to Mexico and get it. And what you should do is you should go to Mexico City. You should email me before you go. I will give you the GPS coordinates of this amazing Tinacao that is south of the city, about 45 minutes. You're going to rent a car. eh, just trust me. You're going to rent a car. You're going to drive down there. You're going to pick it up. You're going to get some pulque, and you're going to some agua miel, which is sort of lightly fermented or almost not at all fermented version of that
Mhm.
same liquid in the agave.
Yeah.
You're going to bring it back. You're going to drink it, not while you're driving. You're going to drink it when you get back to the city in your hotel room, and you're going to bring some of it over to La Rifa, and you're going to say, "Hey, Daniel, I was on that tasting, with Lou. Yeah, and he said that you do this amazing version of pulque where you cure it with the cacao. Like, as
Yeah.
much as
Yeah,
as much as I love the experience of the cacao without the pulque caramel in it more than I love like, I think my favorite experience of all of these things truly is your cacao cured version of pulque. That to me is
crazy.
heaven.
Thank you.
Crazy
Thank you.
heaven.
Yeah, I love it.
Hey,
Yeah.
and Remus asked a really good question. The two coins that you did, the Puke Pariavar coin and the Pachuga coin, which cacao did you use?
For the pulque para llevar, we used a clarito variety, which is an endemic
Mhm.
cacao variety from Pichucalco in Chiapas. This is a different variety because this is a regional blend from Pichucalco's cacao farmers, meaning that if Daniel is my neighbor and I have also cacao plantations and we are both from Pichucalco, we join our batches
Mhm.
together in order to have bigger amounts and a more even fermentation process. And clarito was made. So
Mhm.
this
So
is
so
another,
Clarito is not a varietal. It's just literally a combination of
yeah,
varietals,
exactly,
It's
different
exactly.
varietals,
almost.
different farms.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's a white almond endemic from Pichucalco. So this variety was very, very interesting for us to
Yeah.
discover because it was also a white almond as Blanco Marfil, but it was a representative blend from the Pichucalcos region. So
Mhm.
it has a lot of similarities with Blanco Marfil, but they are also very, very different from each other.
And
Yeah.
and so that's the same that was used, the same combination. The Clarito was also used for the Pachuga fruit coin.
No, the
No.
pechuga it's a selva
So
lacandona, no?
another very interesting cacao blend was used for the Pechuga coin. So we visited another cacao organization in Lacandona Jungle in Chiapas. And for me, this trip was mind blowing to see all the organization and all the commitment that La Alianza de Cacauteros de la Selva, which is the farmers from the Pechuga coin, they also have a polyvarietal blend of cacaos. And this organization has more than 58 different cacao families working in the organization. And what happens is that they get together and they organize themselves to help each other with fermentation, drying, transporting, and working with their cacaos in order to have also bigger amount of cacao batches. So Selva Lacandona is a very, very interesting flavor profile too. And we thought it was really interesting
Mhm.
to see how they were balancing between the pechuga and the cacao flavors. So that's the cacao we use for pechuga.
Mhm.
Okay, quick question before I ask it though. Like this is the Pachuga coin. It doesn't say
Mhm.
Pachuga. It just says La
La
Rifa. It's a
Rifa,
mystery
right?
coin. You should have 3 to 6 of them, depending on what you ordered in your package. Um, and um, and then the chocolate de mesa is just the chocolate de mesa. The sugar used in everything here is regular sugar, like right, like except for this Pachuga
Except,
coin where you
Right.
use the Pioncillo, which isn't really molasses, but because it's a relatively raw sugar, it's going to have molasses content in it.
Exactly.
God, I love it when I get
sí.
my sugar right.
I love piloncillo, just for the record.
Yes. Yes, and you're moving, if I understood you correctly, you're going to be moving to using only Pioncillo
Yeah,
in your
we did it.
chocolates.
So we are live on the piloncillo plan now. So all the chocolate that it's made at La Rifa is made with piloncillo. So it's interesting. It's a
Yeah,
switch, and it's an important change for us.
yeah.
For the project and the intentions that we're having with our ingredients and the way we treat the chocolate too. So
Yeah,
I hope
the
people like it as much
the
as we do.
flavor and the traceability and the sustainable ¿cómo se llama? Plantation make this decision. No? This time need radical decisions.
Yeah.
You know, when
Radical
you
times, radical decisions.
when you were putting together the samples for the Pachuga chocolate, you sent a bunch of these samples over to Chava, and of course he loved them all because everything you do is worthy of love. But the thing he loved the most was just the straight up cacao with the piancillo, which again speaks to the idea that this is cocktail right here. And like
Yeah,
okay, okay, but
Okay.
yeah,
and it's delicious, but man, your straight up chocolate is the
Thank you.
thing. It's the thing.
Thank you
Oh,
very much.
okay, so now we've already. I thought this would be an hour, but it's chocolate. Like, who am I kidding myself? So, if anybody has questions, throw them up now. Right? Like, if you've got questions that you've not asked throughout this, or if you asked a question and I somehow missed it because my hands are covered in caramel and I can't type anymore, now would be the time to throw it up into the chat. Or the Q&A.
Ah,
Oh,
el
can you talk
about
about
mexicano.
roasting? How did we
about
forget
Claro,
roasting.
claro,
Yeah,
roasting?
yeah,
claro,
yeah,
claro.
yeah.
You guys talk
Well,
roasting. I'm gonna go wash my hands.
Okay. So we
¿qué le
get
digo? Ah,
the cacao beans sent to La Rifa in CDMX from Chiapas, from Tabasco, and we get them already fermented or washed and dried, but unroasted. So we keep our cacao unroasted beans in sacks. So when we are doing the Hi. So whenever we are starting the process, we are going to get batches of those cacaos, depending on what we're going to do. And before we start roasting them, we have to pre-select them just to get rid of any like tiny undeveloped cacao beans or any tiny garbage. And well, we just pre-select just to have a very beautiful, even cacao beans. And then we go to our convection oven. We roast all of our cacaos in a convection oven because this way we get to have the same temperature in the entire oven. Okay. So ¿cuáles son los
ajá.
parámetros?
And ya dijiste lo de la cascarilla que no se rompa.
No.
In the oven, we keep the husk covering
The bean.
the bean of the cacao. And sometimes if we use like a coffee roasted, the husk start to break and the smells and the flavor start to lost. We prefer the oven, and we think the temperature we need to control is the temperature when the cacao butter start to quemar.
Burn.
Start to burn. And this temperature is 120 grados centígrados Celsius. And if we keep to don't pass this temperature, our cacao butter keep intact and with all of these flavors, no? Because if you si tú quemas,
If you burn.
if you burn the butter, you lost all of these flavors. No?
So 120 Celsius degrees for roasting the cacao for approximately 25 minutes.
Had like a 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's depend of the your
Variety too.
your variety and your oven and your instrument. But I think it's possible roasted good cacao in comal in all.
And and I just want to add, like, if you go to the Dark Matter Sleepwalk Chocolate Factory in Chicago, in Pilsen, right, and you ask them the same question about getting roasted, you have to be very specific. If you don't ask them about how they cook their cacao, instead of if you say roasted, how do you get roasted, you're going to end up high. Anyway, that's a different question. Now, I have the question here about the unlabeled bean packet. The unlabeled bean packet is, in fact, that washed. We got so deep into the washed bean and what that means, the washed cacao bean. I don't think we did touch on that, but that is an example of the
Yeah.
unfermented, yeah, the unfermented washed cacao bean. Um,
Exactly.
and then Remus asked, why are there a lot of animals on chocolate labels? And I think it's because animals love chocolate.
True that too. But also that all of these animals are representative of the kind of fauna that we can find in cacao plantations. So there's this cacao plantation in Tabasco that has a swamp on the back, and there's an alligator living there. So I didn't believe it until I saw it. It was crazy. But we also have like wild pigs running into the cacao plantations, and of course, monkeys live in the cacao plantations, and monkeys, wild boars, the wild pigs,
The snakes,
snakes.
tusas,
I don't know how to say tusa, but it's like
like a rat, big
oh,
rat.
is he like a big rat? I don't know. No, no.
Isn't it some of it's also just like the local mythology, like the jaguar, right? The
Ah,
jaguars,
true that. True
yeah.
that. So
So it's a
sometimes in the
combination of,
Arizona jungle,
Uh-huh.
you can find
yeah.
jaguars, and it was important for us to have the fauna being represented in our project, because we firmly believe in preserving the biodiversity and to keep these ecosystems as sustainable as possible, not just for us humans, but also for the fauna and the biodiversity and the people, the way of living of these communities also, right?
And so the only example of a chocolate made from a washed cacao was that table chocolate, the chocolate de
Sí,
mesa, right?
sí, exactly.
Everything else was made with fermented cacao.
Exactly.
Okay. And then a very basic question, but very important question. Like it's so interesting to me, right? Like I do all of these things on agave and Chava and I have this podcast and we just get lost in the details because we assume everybody is up to speed with us. But, Grover asked a really important question. What is cocoa butter? What is cacao butter?
Very
Yeah.
important question. So let's remember that cacao is made with mostly two elements, right? The cacao butter and the cocoa powder. So for us, it's very, very important to make a distinction between what cocoa is and cacao, because cocoa is only the solids of our cacao beans, when cacao is the entire bean. So
Literally the only thing that's missing is the butter.
mhm,
Okay, so when you take the fat out of the cacao,
the
you're left with
natural fat.
you're
The
left with
natural
cocoa
fat.
powder, the natural
Yeah.
fat, right?
And
You're
it's
left,
Exactly.
super, super special, no?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, because cacao butter is, as it is a natural fat, it's very good for our bodies. It
kind of like
also,
avocado.
exactly, just like the avocados.
but
And
more
all of the
magic.
magic, see, but all of the flavors stay in the cacao butter. The flavor is always in the fat. That's why we love to eat pork, and we love to eat chicharrón here, and
Avocado.
avocados. So all of the crazy flavors that we get in the chocolate are mostly because they are saved in the cacao butter.
Well,
So
hang on a second now. I'm going to throw a flag on that one because I've had plenty of cocoa powders at home that I use to make drinks, and they taste, not as good as the stuff you make, but they taste good. There's good flavor in that. So it can't be that all of the flavor comes
No,
from the
no, not
butter.
all the flavor because the aromas they stay in the solids, and yes, of course, some of the flavor of the cacao stay there too. But the thing is that when you grind cacao beans, when you grind coffee, you're going to get coffee powder. But if you grind cacao beans, you're getting this
Paste.
cacao
I
paste,
think.
right?
Because
So
of the
the texture
fat.
is,
Uh-huh.
that's all the fat. So whenever you want to separate the cocoa powder from the cacao butter, they use a hydraulic press. So this press separates the solids, the cocoa, from the cacao butter. And cacao butter has many uses. It is used in bakery recipes, but it's also used in the cosmetic industry, and it's used in white chocolate too, but
Mhm.
in the industry.
Uh-huh.
So
But
that's
it's so special because at temperature,
room temperature.
room temperature,
It's solid.
Uh-huh.
So as it's a natural fat, when cacao butter is in room temperature, is solid instead of liquid, you know?
So, I think this actually feeds into the question that Kimberly Gordon is asking, where she wrote that she's read that cacao is processed at a lower temperature than cocoa, which I suspect is in essence what you're saying, that you can use a higher temperature if you've removed the cocoa butter, the cacao butter. You can go at a
Mhm.
higher temperature because you're not going to then burn up that butter. With
Exacto.
your
Fíjense que
solids are
el
going to be
cacao,
safer at a higher temperature
Ah,
than
yeah.
se calienta
than the
más
fat
cuando
will
ya no
be.
tiene la
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
manteca.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And when I see, Lisa asks, when I see cocoa butter on a label, is it truly cacao butter? And they're just messing with her? Because people do that with Lisa.
¿Cómo?
Que
No,
le
no.
pusieron en la etiqueta que tenía manteca de cacao, su cocoa. So, la cocoa no puede tener manteca de
Yeah.
cacao.
The cocoa natural cut a little percent
Natural
cut butter because it's impossible to
Completely.
100% separate. All the times the cocoa had a
A
little, ¿cómo se llama? Un
A
poquito,
tiny piece of
a tiny
cacao
bit
butter.
of cacao butter.
Tiny piece of cacao butter. That's the island I want to live on.
I me
But,
too.
Okay, so
but
I think we're at the yeah, we're like we got 2 minutes left, and I do want to say, like, anybody, how do you sign up for the monthly subscription? Oh, come on, Remus, I know you better than that. You want the weekly subscription. So, like, if you want chocolate, the hard way to do it is, if you're gonna order bulk, the way that I tend to, fly down to Mexico City, pick it up, and fly back with it. Like, it's funny.
Come
The
say
Illinois
hi.
Liquor Control Commission never bothers me about bringing 200 pounds of chocolate with me, and
Yeah.
yet somehow when I bring alcohol, I get in trouble. Anyway, so you can fly down there and bring it back. And just have the best chocolate of everybody you know. You can also get it FedExed if you're buying enough. It might make sense for you to get it FedExed, and it seems crazy to do, but again, I have looked for other producers. There's this. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but there's this documentary that is on Amazon called "Setting the Bar," where the owners of the most artisanally made chocolates in the USA take a trip to, I think it's Peru, together in search of this rare varietal of cacao called Nativo. Like, it's like saying I'm looking for a rare varietal of tomato called heirloom. Like, it's shocking as I'm watching this. Like, I'm not that smart about cacao and chocolate,
No,
but
you
watching
are.
this document, well, everything I know I've learned from hanging out with you guys. So, like, I'm this compared to you guys, that, like, right? And yet I watched this documentary, and this is the key point, that includes the owners of the most respected artisanal chocolate brands in the USA. I know more than they do from hanging out with you guys for a little bit. So my point is, like, if you're really into chocolate and you want to get more into chocolate, just order it directly from these cats. If you like, you don't even have a website. It annoys the hell out of me. You got to go to like their Facebook page or their Instagram page, send them a message or send me a message, and I'll connect you to them by WhatsApp or text or email,
For
and you can
sure.
order from them
Yeah,
and get just amazing stuff FedEx to you. Another way to do it is if you go to the Dark Matter Coffee
yeah,
website, you can order from them when they haven't run out of it because they keep selling out so quickly.
Get your
And
chocolate now, people.
but didn't you say there's some other organization that's selling your stuff up here in the USA by
So
mail order now?
we started working with tamoa, which is corn, chiles, beans, endemics,
mhm,
ingredients from Mexico, and they decided to visit with us some cacao plantations. And after a long, long year, we started selling with them some chocolate, some single origin chocolate, some traditional chocolate, and cacao nibs.
And they're
So
located here in the US of A.
they don't have like they have a warehouse, but you can find them on their website. You can ask for their catalog. It's called Tamoa, Tamoa
Can you
Mexico.
spell that? I'll put it. It's TAM
TAMOA.com.
.com. .com. There you go. Um,
You
and
can
and
find
and and we're gonna be selling the Pachuga fruit coins in packets of 5 at some point off of the sacred.mx website. Um, and we're gonna do more bars with you because chocolate. And
yeah.
as
we
long
love
as Claro
chocolate.
keeps ordering bars, there's no way they're gonna get to have your chocolate and I
Oh
don't.
my
That
god.
is not acceptable. Not
Oh my
acceptable.
god.
And then once the world opens up sufficiently, and we are so close here in the U.S., like it's so close here in the U.S. Um, as soon as it opens up, I'm bringing you guys back up for that tour we were supposed to do back in
2020.
2020, and hit. I think we had you set up in like 12 different cities.
Okay.
So then people will be able to meet you all across the US of A and buy stuff directly from you and do another tasting with different
Oh,
cacaos
see,
and
see, see.
chocolates.
I miss talking to people. We really enjoy the tasting tours. I mean, virtual sessions are super fun, but having people to see their reactions when they're tasting chocolate, it's
Yeah,
priceless. So whenever you come to Mexico City or whenever you invite us to your hometowns,
yeah.
we will be happy to share some of our tiny experience in comparison of the biggest world in chocolate, I think.
Amen. And Amy, they'll absolutely be here in Chicago. In fact, I think you guys are coming shortly because you got
Yeah,
to stop
probably
in at
we'll be there
Sleepwalk.
in June or something. So
Yep. And
expect us.
yeah,
Expect us.
and we had them set up, David. We had them set up to visit Las Almas Rotas in Dallas. So once the world is
Oh, we
opened up
want
enough
to visit
again,
that.
See,
Yeah.
they'll be
see, see.
visiting Dallas. And Remus says this was so freaking awesome. He's down
Thank
another
you.
rabbit hole. This rabbit hole, though, at least you can share with your wife in a way that she'll appreciate. I think, Remus. Maybe not. That's a cliche. Not all women love chocolate, but all the women that we love chocolate. And I think we're gonna call this, unless you've got anything else to share, guys. We're gonna call it a
Thank you.
wrap.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.
guys.
Thank you, Lou, for everything, Lou. And yeah, if you want tasting cacao and chocolate, write to Lou and us and visit
I'll make
the
sure you
sleepwalk.
get some chocolates shipped to your door.
Yeah.
So thank you
And
very much, guys. Enjoy.
Hasta, hasta
enjoy.
pronto.
Hasta
Hasta luego.
pronto,
Adiós.
Lu.
Saludos.
Bye.
Bye.